All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. In this episode, we're diving deep into the current state of Maine's housing market to uncover the truth behind the trends. From rising prices that are shifting buyers' behavior, we're going to explore the factors driving the market and what it means to be a buyer, a seller, or an investor. Whether you're a local resident or considering relocating to Maine, this video will give you a comprehensive understanding of the housing market and to help you hopefully make informed decisions. Get ready to separate fact from fiction and discover what's really happening in Maine's market. If this is going to be of interest to you, if you guys are looking to buy, sell, or invest, or you're looking to relocate here, guys, then grab a pen and paper because we're going to get into that right now. All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Scott Tebow. I'm a real estate broker, realtor with eXp Realty. I'm also an investor. I'm also a consultant. I actually consult on land and other commercial property opportunities that are not on the multiple listing service. Like I said, I'm an investor. I own a couple of buildings myself. I own a business other than my real estate practice. And more kind of importantly than that, guys, I'm married. I'm a father of 5 kids, 3 grandchildren. I'm a veteran. I'm a patriot. And I'm a son of Maine, which means I was born and raised here, or as we call this, a Mainer. If you're not born and raised here, but you live here now, you're called a new Mainer. But I'm an original Mainer or a maniac. So grew up here my whole life, or most of my life, graduated high school, went off to see the world. Came back about 10 years later. I've been back ever since. I realized while I was away how great of a place Maine is to raise a family, to live, the quality of life, the slower pace, the friendliness of the Maine people, if you will, our people here, really giving me a good understanding, especially after I've seen the rest of the world and actually other parts of this country, why Maine is such an awesome place to live. So let's look at those trends. Median sale prices for a single-family home in early of this year was $385,000, which is about up 9% year over year. December 2024, it hit an all-time high of $400,000. Sales activities have also been increased. In January of this, a couple months ago of 2025, there was 853 homes that sold. That's 13% more than did in January of 2024. In February, we're seeing kind of the same things. In February's market, it's one of the best times to buy in Maine. Wasn't as high of an increase. It was like 6%, but still, we saw more homes sell in February than we did this year, February of 2024. And Maine is actually outpacing the national trends with about, national trends are around 4 to 5%. We're close to 16% in terms of homes that are selling and the prices that are happening. While the pandemic kind of did just make things crazy in terms of how fast housing prices went up, as I said before, from 2019 to 2024, Maine saw a 78% increase in the housing prices in Maine, here in Maine. It's slowed down, right? The pandemic boom is kind of over. It's slowed down and it's kind of balancing now out at more of a national trend of 4 and 5, maybe 6%. The national trend's right around 4, so we're kind of around there, maybe a little bit higher as more and more people discover Maine. Let's talk about the 5 things that are driving the prices here in Maine and what's really going on, at least at the beginning of 2025. Here we are in March. Inventory is actually improving. I've talked about this in a few other videos. We're seeing the inventories level come up, but they're still not where they need to be a balanced market, right? Last year, or I should say in January of this year, we saw inventories go at about 14% higher than last year. What does that mean? That means that the days on market, while it's still kind of high, around 40, we've seen more inventory, which is causing the days on market to be longer, but we're giving buyers more of a choice. The real other problem is the homeowner vacancy rate is less than 1%. So for every house that's on the market, less than 1% of them are vacant, which means every time property comes on the market, it doesn't matter if you have more property or less property, it's going to sell. Now, if you price your house right as a seller, you're going to get probably multiple offers. And I'm starting to see multiple offers as more and more homes are being priced kind of at the right level, not the pandemic levels where things were $50,000, $60,000 overpriced. But with less than a 1% vacancy in homes, in terms of homes that are not occupied, the demand is far outstripping the supply. And home builders, as I said in other videos, we're about 84,000 homes behind the demand. And they estimate that it's going to take us to 2030 to get to that level where supply and demand is somewhat balanced. However, if you look at the last 2 years trends, like let's look at last year, I think there were only 783 new homes built. And this year, it's actually going to be a little less. So if you continue to extrapolate those numbers out, we're not going to meet our demand by 2030. So supply is still going to be less than demand, and prices are going to stay higher unless something drastically changes. And the other big challenge is construction cost, right? So there's a project that I got word of up in Madison, which is way up there in Somerset County, up by Aroostook County, up by the county. And they were looking at building, I think, 200 units, housing units up there. And they came up that it's going to cost about, the builders came up, it's going to cost about $280,000 per unit, per house up there to build. However, when you looked at what the Maine Housing Authority was saying and the subsidies that a builder could get to help build up there, they only penciled it out at about $110,000. So with the cost of material, the leaning labor inventory, if you will, the less amount of people that we have, especially up in northern Maine, it just doesn't make financial sense for builders to continue to build that fast up there just because it doesn't make sense. People aren't going to pay those $280,000 to build. Let's say the builder's going to step on it, right? They're going to want $350,000, $400,000 because they're putting all the risk in. Market doesn't cover it up there. So the cost of building is very high still. Supply issues, right? And labor issues. That being said, I will say this, there are more contractors and more people coming into the trades. It's grown in Maine by about 7-8%. So that's a good thing. That's going to help alleviate some of the challenges we have with building in Maine. But still, with 84,000 houses behind to build and to catch up by 2030, the lack of the speed of these properties being built, like I said, less than 2,000 in the last year and a half, we're not going to hit it if something doesn't change. Number two, other than the cost to build stuff, is the rental market. So how does the rental market actually affect the single family home market? Well, the rental market the vacancy rate is extremely low, right? It's about 2.9%. That's extremely low, right? Typically, when investors buy rental units, or when you're looking to buy a rental unit yourself and live in half of it or a portion of it, you're going to allocate 5 to 7% vacancy. That's kind of what the lenders allocate, right? They want to understand that if everything isn't happening, if everything isn't full, how you're going to cover that cost. So they use that 5 to 7%. But the reality is, in the last 4 to 5 years, the vacancy rate has been 2.9% or less. And the other challenge is, with the vacancy rate being so low, rental prices are high, right? In Portland, as an example, the average apartment in Portland, let's say a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, maybe a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath, but typically a 2-1 or 2-1.5 or a 3, like I said, it's about $2,800 a month. Those prices have come down a little bit, kind of like to $2,500 a month, but still, it's a lot of money. It costs a lot to rent homes, especially in Southern Maine, or to rent apartments in Southern Maine. Smaller cities like Bangor, which isn't that small of a city, it's the third largest city in Maine, they've also seen increases. While their rents aren't that high, they've seen a 10 to 15% annual growth in rents up there as well. Now, there are rent controls that Portland put in place, and in other cities are exploring affordable options. But the reality is, when you have so many people renting at that price, they're starting to say to themselves, why am I going to continue to pay that amount of money and help somebody else pay their mortgage? Maybe I should enter the market and potentially look at buying my own place for that price. And you can find homes, for an overall cost of $2,800, $3,000, not in southern Maine, not in Portland, but if you look in the outskirts, if you head to western Maine or just get away from the coast, 20 to 30 miles, you'll find home prices that will allow you to afford what you're paying in rent. One of the other problems is Maine is really, it's almost like two different states when it comes to housing, right? You got southern Maine, you got the coastal region, and you got Portland. And those areas, there's high demand for houses, right? And the median price for those areas of houses, like where I live, Biddeford, Saco, anywhere along that coast coming up into Maine, from Wells, Kittery, York, Wells, Ogunquit, Kennebunkport, I'm just going up the coast, Arundel, Biddeford, Saco, Scarborough, Portland, Yarmouth, Cape Elizabeth, all those towns, kind of South Portland, all those towns going right up into Cumberland County. The median sale price, median now, that means half the houses are more and half the houses are less, is $550,000. Now, having grown up in Maine, that seems like a lot of money, but it hasn't deterred people moving here or paying those prices, because York County, where I live, has had the fastest growing number of houses being sold in the state in the last couple of years. And it's pretty much because of the beaches and our proximity to Boston and whatnot. But we've had more houses sold in York County as a percentage of population than we have in Cumberland County. Oh, in Cumberland County is number 2. So people are paying those prices because they want to live in this part of Maine. Conversely, if you look at the mid-coast and the coastal towns, when you get up past Portland, when you're headed up what I call mid-coast or down east, Bar Harbor, if you will. I'm a Mainer, so it's Bar Harbor. I'm talking to somebody right now. I'm helping him buy land in Bar Harbor, and he said, Bangor. I'm like, you're going to have to work on your pronunciations because they're going to know you're not from here. But when you get up there, it's the second highest market, right, between Portland South. You got Bar Harbor, Camden, Rockland, heading up that coast, Brunswick. What else you get up there? Obviously, you got Hancock County and Knox County, where you get into Booth Bay and all that. It's the second highest price places to live in Maine, just under $500,000 in general. But you also have a lot of second-time home buyers up there, or people that are buying vacation homes, which drives the price up, because some of those homes along the cliffs and on the rocky shores, they're $1 million plus. And that's one of the reasons why Maine has seen more $1 million homes sold last year than ever in the history of Maine, because all these people that have money that are buying vacation homes along these coast of Maine, i.e. up in the Bar Harbor, Booth Bay, even down here in Biddeford Pool, Scarborough Beaches, Fortunes Rocks in Biddeford, and then you get out to Kennebunkport. There's a lot of high price homes that are being sold in those areas, and they're really going to people for vacation homes that have money. And then you get around. So that's kind of one part of the state, right? And it's really it's southern Maine and the coast up to about Bar Harbor. Then you get into Bangor and central Maine, where prices have come down, right? Central Maine, like I'm going to say Augusta or Bangor, you're seeing the median price around $285,000, right? So again, half the houses are higher, half the houses are less, but it's still higher than it's been ever. Just as more people are moving to Maine, and as the world economy changes, you're seeing more and more people having the ability to work remotely. Maine invested a lot of money into its infrastructure to attract remote workers specifically, and it's also attracting younger people. So Maine, I think we still have the oldest population, but we're starting to attract a lot of younger professionals because of the quality of life and because of the infrastructure that has been put in Maine, specifically around bandwidth, high-speed internet, stuff like that. It's really helping people, younger professionals, move here to start businesses or to bring their business with them. Maybe it's online or maybe they work somewhere else. But they are allowed to work remotely. So you're seeing an influx of young people. The city that I live in, Biddeford, which is the oldest city in Maine in terms of when it was incorporated. I mean, York County is the oldest territory. If you're York, Maine is the oldest territory, but Biddeford was the first incorporated city in Maine back in the 1700s. We are the youngest city in terms of population when you look at our demographics. So another thing that's driving that is obviously what we've invested in the infrastructure. And then Northern Maine, really, I kind of lump that in with Central Maine, but not really. It's not really a third state, but prices are the most affordable. They still, you're seeing them go up, but they're not as crazy as like down on the coast, right? So let's really talk about, that's the second trend, right? Regional breakdown. Who's moving in? I should say the third trend, right? Cost, construction is number one, inventory is number two, regional breakdown is number three. Number four is really who's coming here. So I get this on my my videos. I get a lot of comments. Don't let any more people come in. You're ruining the state of Maine. Why are you attracting out-of-state buyers? Yada yada yada. Guys, you got to look at the facts. Of all the homes that were sold last year in Maine, and actually over the last 3 or 4 years, a third of those homes have been from out-of-state buyers. 2/3 of those homes are from in-state buyers. So we have seen an increase in population, right? We were stagnant for a bunch of years, around 1.2, 1.3. We're getting close to 1.4 now. Remote work, like I said, is fueling the people coming to Maine. And as I said, younger people, and actually retirees are moving here as they're kind of getting away from the heat in the South. So climate change is driving it. The ability to work remotely is driving it. The quality of life is driving it. As younger people move here and start businesses, you're getting these out-of-state buyers, which is really helping to, what's the word I'm looking for? Really helping to put an influx into Maine's economy. Now, sure, you Mainers that don't want any more people coming into the state because you're afraid the way the state's going to change. Guys, we only have about 1.4 million, a little less than 1.4 million people in the state, and there's a lot of room for growth. Maine is the most sparsely populated state in the country. And I mean, Aroostook County alone, the largest county in Maine, is the most sparsely populated county in the, I'm going to say in the world, but in the country. We have a lot of land that can be developed, not right along the coast, but as you get further north and west. So, and again, retirees coming here, they're trying to get out of the heat. When I was a kid, everybody wanted to move to Florida when they retired, right? Or they became snowbirds. And some people are still doing that, but you're seeing that season getting shorter and shorter and shorter. I have friends now that are in that kind of age group, the end of the baby boomers, if you will. And, I see them going down now in January and coming back in like April, where before they'd go down right around Thanksgiving, older crowd that is, right around Thanksgiving, kind of my parents' age, right around Thanksgiving, and not come back till May. Well, the climate here in Maine has gotten warmer over the years, right? It's still cold. I mean, today it's 42 degrees. We've had snow the last couple of days. That's not the norm, right? Normally we're gonna have nice sunny days, but you're seeing that migration is getting more and more retirees coming to the north to escape the heat as the heat's lasting longer. The fifth reason these home prices aren't going to change that much, that we're seeing an increase and we're seeing more people move here, is the policies that these municipalities are making. So last year, actually in 2023, the state of Maine passed a new policy called LD 2003, which essentially said that we need more housing, and therefore we're going to allow the municipalities, we're going to force the municipalities to change their zoning to reform to this multi-unit and ADU, these ADU builds. ADU is accessory dwelling unit. So now on a single lot where you can, on a lot like where I live, where you can only have a single house, you can now build an ADU on top of that accessory dwelling unit. It's not a full-fledged house, but it's kind of like, I look at it like an in-law apartment, or if you have a garage and you want to build above the garage and rent it out, or, have your in-laws live there, or your parents or grandparents. They're allowing that now, where before you couldn't do that, right? They're also changing the laws around duplexes and how many you can put on a lot, because they're trying to solve the inventory issue that Maine has in terms of not enough housing. There's also subsidies and incentives for workforce housing. We're seeing more of that where I live. Biddeford has really gone from kind of a blue-collar town, a mill town. It's been revitalized. All the mills have been redeveloped. You have a ton of micro businesses. You also have a ton of apartments. You have a lot of people moving to this part of the state because of what's in the area, the beaches, the climate, the proximity. And what it's really done is it's kind of priced out the locals, right? The gentrification, if you will, of southern Maine, and mostly a lot of Maine, is really pricing out the locals that have lived here. So what you're seeing is a lot more workforce housing, not Section 8 or stuff like that, just workforce housing, where if you're somewhere between, I want to say, 60% and 120% of the area's median income, you qualify for workforce housing. So in other words, if you lived in Biddeford and you made, I don't know, I think it's 80 grand a year, you would qualify for workforce housing. Now, guys, if you go back 10 years ago, if you made 80 grand a year living in southern Maine, you'd live pretty good. You could afford just about anything around. I mean, not the $1 million homes on the cliffs, but you could afford most houses. But that's all changed. So wages haven't kept up with inflation, and it hasn't kept up with the price of houses. So now they're looking at how do we subsidize, or how do we help developers through subsidies build workforce housing that'll allow for the housing crunch to soften a little bit, allowing the locals to still live here and not be pushed out. Guys, in conclusion, here's the reality of the Maine market. I don't see it changing anytime fast. And while you're hearing about Florida, the west coast of Florida, or Texas, or even California, some of these other states that are starting to see dips in the inventory as interest rates are still kind of up there, and they're driving people out in the price of houses. That's not happening in Maine. It really isn't. You're continuing to see houses appreciate. Now, they're not going to go like that. They're appreciating. But with the lack of supply, right? 84,000 houses behind, with the beautiful countryside, the quality of life, just the friendliness of the people. It's just, the slower pace of life. You do have more people wanting to move to Maine or live here that want to buy in Maine, that probably are paying too much or think they're paying too much for apartments. So they're going to try to buy houses. So there's so much demand, it's just not enough supply. Inventory is starting to improve, and I've said this in a few other videos. I don't think we have an inventory problem. Yes, supply is not keeping up with demand, but we still have a lot of houses to choose from. And as long as we can continue, as the interest rates start ticking down a little bit, and they are starting to, you're going to see, because the age-old question was, Scott, I'd love for you to sell my house, but where am I going to go, right? So that's why there's less than a 1% vacancy rate on homes that are occupied. And why inventories, that's one of the reasons why inventory levels are so low. People there's not enough inventory out there for me to sell my house and then go someplace else. And even if I sell my house and make a ton of profit, I'm going to just pour that profit into another property. And if I can't pay cash for that property, I'm going to be in a higher interest rate. So you're starting to see interest rates tick down, and you're starting to see inventories come up, and you are seeing more and more houses come on the market. And then policy, as I said, was really laying the groundwork. It was just really going to affect how Maine moves forward in terms of our housing crisis. But make no mistakes about it, guys. There's still a lot of people that are trying to buy houses in Maine, and there's quite a few people that are trying to move here to buy property in Maine. It's not impossible. I know this sounds like doom and gloom. It's not impossible. You really, as a buyer, I'm going to give myself a plug. As a buyer, you really, really got to work with a realtor that really understands the market and understands some of the strategies and kind of things that they can do, programs that they can put in place, understanding what's available and what's out there to help you from their past successes, help you buy a home in Maine. And then if you're a local buyer, let's say you're a first-time buyer, or you're kind of, you live in a house now and you want to upsize, maybe your family's expanding, or just conversely, maybe you're kind of where I am in my life, and older kids have kind of left the nest, they're all in college or married and have kids, and you might be looking to downsize. You really got to work with some experienced realtors that have done this in the past for their clients, and obviously testimonials and what other clients say about their work and their habits and their beliefs will really tell the tale of if they're experienced or not, and should you work with them. I encourage you all to read my testimonials, or even talk to some of the people that I've helped do this. But it's not about me. It's about you, just kind of keeping you informed of what's going on in the market. Guys, if this information you found helpful, if you want to know more about the trends that are happening in Maine, then I would encourage you to subscribe to this channel, tap that bell to be notified. I get calls, texts, emails all the time for people to looking to move here, or people to looking to sell or buy, and if you're in that process, if you're looking in the next 90, 120, 150 days to do something like that, then I would encourage you to reach out to me and let's have a conversation. I generally set up a Zoom call. I have a whole process, if you will, on how I help buyers in Maine, whether you're from away or whether you're local, find homes. I have custom search tools. I have custom applications. I have custom software. And then I have a whole program set up for first-time home buyers, second-time home buyers, video recordings, virtual recordings if you can't be here. And sometimes I lean on the listing brokers to do that too. Depends on where they're buying. But I cover the whole state of Maine. If I can't be there physically, like if you're looking to buy something, 5 or 6 hours away, well, then I can put you in touch and I can work with, the listing brokers up there, or some of the brokers up there, because they're part of my team. Right? I have people all across the state that I can work with that are on my team here at EXP that will help us make sure you get what you're looking for to meet your goals and needs in the real estate market. In closing, stay smart, stay warm, and try to live life in Maine. Guys, talk to you later. Scott Tebow over and out. Bye-bye.